Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this podcast titled Women in Engineering, organized by the British Embassy in Bahrain. My name is Hamid Behzad from the British University of Bahrain, and I'm joined here today with two interesting senior female engineers from the Royal Navy. On my right is Hannah, and on my left is Shannon, and I'm very happy to be here with them to basically discuss more about the role of women within engineering. Good morning, ladies, and thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate your time and speaking to us. I believe the time that we're talking about women within engineering is quite key. And I think when we look at the role of women in general over the past 100 years and their involvement and contribution to different industries, it's a great motivating factor to this part of the world. I'm also honored to be talking to both of you ladies from this part of the world and Bahrain specifically, because Bahrain's history, especially related to women, have always pioneered. We've had the first female minister. We've had the first female chairwoman of the House of Representatives, or let's say the Parliament Council. So it's interesting that we're having this conversation within Bahrain as well, and at this time. On my lifetime, let's say, over the past 20 years, I've seen the role of women grow phenomenally. And I truly believe that all of these initiatives and directives are attributed or contributed by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa, the King of Bahrain, and Her Royal Highness Princess Subicha bint Ibrahim Al Khalifa, the First Lady. Ladies, I'd like to kick off by talking more about, let's say, the opportunity we have here and how your role as engineers from a developed country can actually help our viewers, students, employees, entrepreneurs who are looking for a bit of hope. They're in an industry which is, let's be honest, male-dominated. And that could be quite off-putting at times and quite challenging. And it makes women have to build up quite the passion and confidence to challenge that status quo. So we'll start off very simple and we'll kick off slowly and basically ask you both. I'll start off with Hannah. Obviously, growing up in the UK, what got you, let's say, into engineering? Was it a passion? Was it an interest? Was it something you picked up from family or friends? So talk us through those early days of, being part of the UK or any European country. The opportunities are mammoth, especially for women as well. So why this?
So yeah, it's an interesting one for me actually. Growing up, I didn't really have a huge desire specifically to go into engineering. It was sort of something that came later on. I always enjoyed maths and physics. They were my preferred subjects at school. And what actually got me into engineering was the fact that I wanted to join the armed forces at first. And when in the process of joining the armed forces, I was offered to go to an engineering college, which meant that I was sponsored through and then could become an officer in the Royal Navy as an engineer. So that just tied in really well with my education, because obviously I'd enjoyed maths and physics and it all just made sense to me. And that's what got me on the pipeline to become an engineer. Right. So I went to a military engineering college and then went through to university and then joined up as an engineer. Right. Yeah.
So before, let's say, obviously your interest played a key role, but before then, let's say the dreamy age, 6, 7, 8 years old, did you imagine you'd be in the position you are today, or was it a very different kind of spectrum?
To be honest, I didn't think I'd be doing this today.
Right.
I really didn't. I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest, but I never would have considered engineering before. Yes. I think as a young girl, that idea of the dream of becoming an engineer isn't something that's sort of suggested.
Right.
When you're a young woman, you sort of get these different ideas of what you want to be good at and what will be a desirable career. And I don't really think engineering was one of those things that came into it. But yeah, here I am.
Do you feel there are certain qualities, let's say, growing up that you basically had? Was it the fact of enjoying troubleshooting, discipline, trying to DIY, or was it none of the above?
To be honest, so I've got a lot of members of my family in the military, right. So that was the big push for me.
The loyalty, the continuity.
Yeah, yes. So that was something that I knew I wanted to do. I always did. In England, we have cadets and things like that. I was always keen for things like that. So that was what pushed me really. That's what guided me, and then that just tied in well with my studies at school as well.
Interesting. During school time, let's say as well, were you engaged in any, let's say, field activities, DOV or any relative ideas like that? Because in Bahrain we do deliver the Duke of Edinburgh Award and on 3 levels as well. So was that something that any activities were you involved in at school as well?
Yeah, so I got into all that sort of thing really. I did the Duke of Edinburgh.
Right.
with cadets, there were so many opportunities to go away and do exercises
Yes.
and adventurous training and things like that.
Right.
I was really lucky in that sense, actually, that in the UK we get those opportunities to do that.
Right.
Went away on lots of expeditions and things like that, which,
Right, brilliant. Well, Hannah, we'll come back to you. We'll go over to Shannon now to basically discuss very similar thoughts as well. So, Shannon, similarly to Hannah, obviously you've reached this level of engagement within the Royal Navy, and it's a very interesting and challenging at the same time experience. Leading up to this, what did you want to be as a little girl? What did you have in mind? And how did the, let's say, lines meet up in the end?
So I'd say I had a different childhood to Hannah. I very much enjoyed playing in my granddad's shed,
Right.
tinkering with the lawnmowers, and my uncle has a boat, so we used to play with the engines and stuff. I'd say I was only young at this point. I think I was more of a tomboy as a young girl. So for me, engineering was never one I thought of doing. I always wanted to be a cabin crew girl, because stereotypically females were few and far between when it comes to engineering.
True.
So I'd say the messier job, the better it was when I was a child. So when it comes to emptying the oil
All right.
from the engines and changing filters and bits and pieces like that, I'd say that's where I got my first hands-on experience.
Right.
With engineering,
That's very
but
interesting.
not understanding fully or grasping what that was actually engineering.
So let's say it's the love of trying to fiddle around, trying to explore, trying to kind of challenge yourself, I think, in a more funner way, let's say. In terms of the, let's say, build up to the career. So we mentioned with Hannah some qualities like, mathematical skills or science or all of that. Did you feel that there was any kind of academic attraction, or do you feel it was purely you were attracted, let's say, to the physical or practical side of things?
So I went to a school that offered BTECs, which is like a national diploma, and
Right.
I did actually put my name down for doing the engineering side, but the course was fully booked.
Right.
So I ended up doing a BTEC in sport. But then further on, when the course started, I worked out it was just all a male course.
Right.
So I would have been the only female, but there was no spaces.
Right.
I think maybe back through the school year, they could have portrayed a better opinion on it by putting a female through. I understand you don't have to necessarily have a female in engineering just to be like, oh, we have females, but
Yes.
I feel like I'd have probably gone more as I am now if I'd have had that hands-on experience with.
Of course.
I obviously still joined as a mechanical engineer, but I think it would have pushed me further to the desire of it than as having already had hands-on experience.
Of course, and I believe especially the side that you were sort of taken by the physical side, the physical education, all that, and I think is also building up the agility, both mentally, physically, and otherwise, to basically take on a very challenging role. Hannah, I'll come back to you, and obviously when we talk about people's careers, everybody you sit next to on a plane, or you sit next to in a restaurant, or in a pub, or whatever it is, we start saying, oh, what do you do? And sometimes it's this very interesting and exciting story, and they start sharing details. So in your case, what's the most exciting thing about your job, and what do you love about it?
Well, I think when people normally ask me what I do, they're normally quite surprised. I'm not your stereotypical engineer in the Royal Navy. But yeah, no, it's always great telling people about what I do. The fact that I can travel overseas, I'm in the Navy, I'm on an operational warship. It's really interesting stuff. Yeah, and generally people are taken aback by it slightly because I'm not your typical engineer, I don't think.
Do you enjoy, let's say, the maneuverability that the job gives you? Obviously away from the desk job, obviously there's some tasks to do, but more, let's say, out and about.
Definitely. So there's no 2 days that are the same. There's always something going on. There's always something exciting happening. You never really know what you're going to be doing from one day to the next. So you don't find that you get that boredom of a standard 9-to-5 job where you wake up and sit at the desk for however long every day. That's what I like about it.
And I think specifically when we talk about engineering, even outside the context of the Royal Navy, it bears these benefits of basically, you're on a project for 3 years, 4 years, then boom, there's another big project, and you're switching country, you're switching regions or continents, learning a new language to adapt to that new job as well. And I think that's quite an exciting part of engineering and within your industry or your sector as well. Shannon, I'll come back to you with the same question. So obviously everyone finds different excitements within their jobs. What would we say yours is?
The job satisfaction where you've been working on an engine that hasn't been working for 36 hours and you've been trying to diagnose problems and you think it's one defect and it's not, it's another defect, or you have fixed one defect and another defect arises. And when you push that start button and the engine flashes up, it's a sense of relief, but it's that job satisfaction that I've worked all these hours, but it was worth it because it's working, it's running, and I've managed to pass back capability back to the ship.
Absolutely, and I think this is something phenomenal, because you're right. Anything you'd spend so much time on and it just starts heading in the right way. Like, I haven't got much engineering experience, but when I fix a printer and it starts going, I'm very much pleased with myself. So, or fix a jam, should I say? So, so I totally appreciate where you're basically coming from, and I think this is the excitement of the job itself. The fact that you can have that, and I think this happens in everyone's life, the legacy, or let's say the fact that you've done this, it's yours, you've achieved it. I speak to a lot of people about this, and people have different satisfactions within their jobs. If I talk to, let's say, property developers, they say, I love the fact that I can drive through the center of Manama and see my initials or see my name on that building, and I know the hours, the investment, the drawings, the drafts that gone in to actually get that final result. So I think this is very key as well. Linking to that question as well, so obviously, challenges are very important and they exist in any industry. So what would you say would be the challenge in your industry related especially to, let's say, your gender, as a woman within the industry? Do you feel there's any specific challenges to yourself that maybe your male colleagues don't suffer from?
Well, to be honest, when I look at my career and the pipeline that I've taken to get here, I haven't encountered any problems. I'd say I've had a very fair, equal opportunity to anybody else. And the only thing that I would say that maybe is potentially more challenging is that I didn't even appreciate before how important it is to have a role model in your career. Absolutely. And it is a male-dominated industry. And it wasn't until I've met females in engineering that are senior to me, that have been in for 20, 30 years, that I realised, wow, it's so important to have a female role model, because you look at them and you just think, wow, I can do that as well. Like, I can do that too. And if you're generally surrounded by males, you can quite easily think, oh, well, this isn't for me, maybe this isn't the right thing for me to do. But I think it is really powerful to have a strong female role model to look up to.
Absolutely agree with you. Shannon, we'll ask you the same question. So in terms of challenges, how do you feel you have been challenged, or it is a challenge for who you are in your specific industry, let's say? So
again, the same as Hannah, I rarely experience any difference with how I'm treated or how I'm spoken to. I would say my only challenge is I know my limitations myself. So if it comes to lifting a cylinder head, I know that I physically cannot lift one on my own. So my male counterpart can probably pick it up, walk off with it, whereas I know I'd need to ask for help. I wouldn't not try to pick it up, but I just know that there's certain limitations. But with regards to promotion and career, I don't feel like I've ever been stopped because I am a female. We get promoted on merit. So our write-ups of all, they're impersonal. Yes, they may mention she and her within them, but they're still meant to be sort of they'll be just my last name, so they don't have so the board wouldn't know necessarily, without reading through the lines, that we have a female here. It's purely on merit and expertise and skills at hand. Absolutely, and I agree with you when you say it's very important to, let's say, appreciate the limitations, but more importantly is to appreciate the gains. So I think there's a difference between, let's say, male and female workplaces. Yes, there might be some limitations, but there are also some gains that let's say the females could contribute to the workplace, which would create this more well-rounded and more balanced, let's say, workplace as well. And it's amazing how the role of equal opportunities plays, whether it's within engineering or within the Royal Navy specifically, and how this bird can fly with two wings and both contributing equally to its takeoff and landing and all of it. And I think this is very important. Now, going specifically into engineering, obviously the world of engineering has changed phenomenally over the years. If we look at wherever in the world, does not need to be this part of the world, we see a lot of challenges, we see a lot of opportunities, we see a growing population, we see challenges with COVID, we will face challenges post-COVID, and it's a great or big topic. We also start seeing the impact of sustainable development and sustainability and how that basically has changed the role of engineering and continues to.
Obviously, maybe years ago, engineering was purely just taught in the broader sense, whether it's mechanical, electrical, and that was purely it. And now we look at this biochemical, we look at the whole green energy, and we look at the whole renewable energy engineering, and all these different things that have impacted universities, which the sector that I come from, research, and your practical side of the world as well. So I'll start with Shannon this time, and I'll basically ask, what is your hopes for the future of engineering, let's say?
Well, I believe that the greener energy side is developing and evolving rapidly. I think from electric cars to the now no-person driving cars, the autonomous side of it it's ridiculous that one man can just sit from his computer at home and program a car and tell you where to go. But I definitely think we're heading in the right direction, because what we can't do now is recover from all the mistakes we've made previously regarding engineering using crude oil and coal and bits and pieces like that. So where we're developing with the greener side, especially with the oceans, I was watching a documentary on Netflix, obviously many have probably heard of, and the sustainability side and how they try to complement how they see the sea is completely, I still believe is wrong, but it's the stepping further in the right direction with regards like saving the planet and trees and the ozone and everything. I definitely believe the green energy is the future, as many do, otherwise we won't be developing that way.
Of course, and I think it's a very interesting approach or let's say point as well, because it's focusing as well on corporate social responsibility, the role that everyone plays towards, let's say in your case, let's say the ocean engineering, the bio waste and everything else that needs to be taken into consideration, because we have come to know, I think, with a lot of things, and maybe the pandemic is another example, is the world is destructible. It's no longer that element of just go for it and the world's ongoing. There will be certain cases that put us on a very difficult path as well that we need to be responsible of as well. Thank you very much, Shannon. Hannah, back to you. So, looking at the future, of engineering itself, how do you feel that there is scope for us to develop? There's a lot of challenges we basically mentioned, whether it's sustainability, whether it's other issues as well around the world. COVID is one of them as well. How could we basically cope within the field of engineering with all these developments or challenges? Your own thoughts, please.
Well, for me, with engineering, I think the exciting thing is that we can't predict where engineering is going to go. There's so much opportunity, there's so much scope, and 100 years ago, I'm sure we wouldn't have predicted we are where we are now with engineering. I mean, as you've already mentioned, green energy, we've got autonomous vehicles, autonomous systems. There's so much development in those areas at the moment. And yeah, there's so much scope for the future. I couldn't even begin to attempt to predict where it would go, but I think that's what makes it all so exciting. And I think there's always going to be that industry available to us. There'll always be something for us to do next in the industry, yeah.
And I think you're right when it comes to engineering, and especially in this world, there's a lot of changes that we're currently going through. You both mentioned the whole aspect of green energy. We mentioned electric cars. We mentioned so many aspects. We'd even touch upon maybe, let's say, climate change and trying to attempt that from an engineering point of view as well. We see this phenomena of green buildings and green infrastructure and new things like green financing for sustainable projects and for, let's say, projects that are sustainably engineered, let's say. So I think it's a very big change that all of our industries will have to face, and ourselves as people as well. Now, going more into engineering and let's say the role that engineering plays. Now, we're specifically discussing women within engineering. And I think I mentioned before we started filming the role that I play with my students in terms of choosing what kind of programs, especially when they want to do a master's, or even against let's say, or the other way, high school students as well. Do you believe, and I'll come to you, Hannah, do you believe we need to have a further push for women within engineering, considering the 3 R's? And I would say the 3 R's are very important in any decision. The responsibility the job basically has, the risk, and the reward. So how do you feel, do you feel a need that we need to push women towards engineering? And how do you feel you've dealt with these 3 elements within your job as well?
So going back to my previous point about having a role model, I think there is a real need for us to push more women into engineering. not in the sense that we just need more women in engineering for the sake of having more women and being equal, for the sake of having that role model for young girls to look up to make them think, oh, actually, I could do that too. Because without that, chances are that might not happen. But yeah, as you said with the 3 R's, that's a really good way of breaking it down. Yeah.
With engineering, I think especially starting at a very young age is key. And going back to a lot of initiatives I've seen with schools, especially in the UK, and you're probably accustomed to it, which is F1 in schools. So in the UK, there's a great amount of focus on STEM learning, focusing on the science, technology, the engineering, the mathematics, and then sometimes they call it STEAM. So art also plays a role as well. And I think it's very important to start engaging girls from a very young age within engineering, within the aspect of, as we said at the beginning, troubleshooting, DIY, getting hands dirty. And I think this is how we start to challenge the status quo, and we start having more women involvement wherever we are or whatever industry. I've lived in the UK for a few years, but when I come back, I start to, let's say, adjust socially again. So when I see, let's say, a woman driving a taxi or a woman delivering food, I kind of like not stare, but it kind of clicks something. And the truth is it shouldn't, because it is, or opportunities are equal within all industries as well. And engineering is no stranger to that, and not an exception as well. Shannon, I'll come back to you, and with the same question, of course. Do we need to have more women within the industry, and specifically maybe the job that you basically focus on as well? Do you feel there is more scope, or are you fearing from the competition?
I don't think I can overdo Hannah's response with the role model side, but I definitely believe there's more areas for females to join. You can be whatever you want to be nowadays. There's nobody stopping you or telling you that you cannot do it. It all depends on the drive and the determination you have. I'm, as we were discussing previously, a mechanical engineer, which to some females might not seem like a very glamorous job, but it isn't, and I'm 100% not going to tell them it is. You will be covered in fuel, you'll be covered in oil, you'll be smelly, you'll be stood next to a man who smells beautiful because he hasn't been stood looking at an engine for hours on end. But it's, I think we've got to get past the whole, let's get more females in just so your stats look better, so we can say that the military employs 5% of female engineers. It's more of a, if you'd like to do it, then I would definitely 100% say go down that route. If it's something you want to do, there's nobody there to stop you, and nobody's there to even push you either. So it's all sort of self-motivated, self-driven. But there's always room. There's always room for more females. As much as we take males, there's room for females as well within engineering.
When I used to live in the UK, something I was very accustomed to on the TV, which is the Royal Navy adverts. And I'll be honest, it's very much action man kind of thing. I'm not even in the or British, but I wanted to join, to be honest with you, because it was interesting more so that they were actually creating that sense that it's for anyone and anyone with any skill. They were not really focusing on graduates. They were saying, if you just had an apprenticeship, if you just had your A levels or your GCSEs, it was something where everybody could join. And for me, it was like the British equivalent of the American, the Navy, or the military wants you. And I think it does also bear a sense of belonging, which is key for motivation, and it's key for mental health. And I think this is very important to basically focus on as well. Now, earlier we touched upon, ladies, about the challenges, let's say, of the job itself or being within engineering. But now let's go a bit back, and we're literally addressing here, our fellow students at A levels or at GCSEs or at university, considering, a job within engineering. I'll start off with you, Hannah. What would you say were the obstacles within the run-up to what you currently do? So before you even started, so did you run past any issues because of your gender or because of just who you are, let's say?
You know what? I really didn't. I was really lucky in that sense. And I think, obviously, being from the UK, we are lucky with that. But the main challenges for me were my own personal issues. It wasn't to do with my gender. It was to do with the fact that, you need to have the confidence to go and apply for these things. And as Shannon said before, it's all self-motivation. You've got to push yourself. And you've got to put the work in. But it was academic. It was, for my training in the military, that was quite intense. But it was challenging, but it wasn't gender-based challenge. It was a challenge for everyone. Yeah. So I was quite lucky with that.
Right. But that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Shannon, back to you. So same thing with in your experience. Obviously, you're in a different part of engineering as well. So how did you feel? How did you see your run up into the job? Did you face any obstacles, any struggles that whether it's to do with your gender or to do with the job itself?
So personally, I always think that females, myself included, I don't know if this is for everyone, but we have a point to prove. I feel like there's no cliche of females in engineering, but the pressure we put on ourselves is always massive. That, well, I need to be just as good as the guys. Well, the fact that I'm a minority, I need to make it look like I'm better than them. So the pressure's massive, but doesn't need to be there. I feel like we pressure ourselves, stress ourselves out, overthink things, because that's what females do, that we need to be the best in every ability that we've got, and we just can't sometimes. You physically and mentally cannot be the best in all areas, but that doesn't mean you can't improve. It doesn't mean you can't get there. But discrimination side, I don't feel like we previously said, I've never experienced any discrimination, because with how we're set up, we're just with a service number, our main job role title and our last name. So until we go to a unit or a job or a base, they don't know whether I'm male or female until I get in, get there. And I don't know whether sometimes that's a happy addition or sometimes that's but it's just the pressure that you put on yourself to make yourself better is sometimes can consume yourself. So I always believe that if you're struggling and you're worried on your engineering side, there's always something you can look at. There's always some docket, there's always some paperwork, there's always your male counterpart, there's always a female counterpart. So it's just I feel like where we're going, like if you want to go into engineering, if you've got the determination, it's all you need. Yeah.
Do you feel as well, like obviously it's a bit of a generation thing. I think this generation, or the time that we currently live in as well, there is this openness, there is this equality. But have you ever felt, or do you feel maybe if you're in the Navy 30 years ago, it would have been a very different circumstance, or you'd be, I wouldn't say dealt with, I wouldn't or say on, let's say, the managerial level, but I'd say on the colleague level, off-duty kind of reaction or attitude towards you. Do you think it would have been different years ago?
Oh, so it's funny you should say that. So I think females have been going to sea now for 32 years.
Right.
It's either 31, 32 years. And initially, we was not welcomed, whether that was engineering or just females in general, but there was more so as engineers because the men were big and strong and we work and shovel and do bits and pieces. But yes, we've definitely changed our approach to females. We're there now. We're going to stay. We've just introduced females onto submarines in the last 5-6 years. Females can be divers if they want now. It used to just be purely males. And our ships are now developing as well for being purely male ships company only, which we know as stag ships.
Right.
They're now introducing female accommodation areas and showers, so that there is a lot of us. We're here, we're around, we're going to stay. It's just improving with the Navy as the new ships come out.
Well, that's actually amazing. So like we have this element of adaptation. So this literally in a physical sense as well, preparing a workplace for women as well is and especially when it comes to, let's say, military entities, obviously they are, let's say, the hardest, let's say, to revolutionize because they precede any other industry or any other business, let's say, in the world. Hannah, I'll come back to you. And basically, we've talked about the struggles and now a bit happier. So the benefits, let's say, of women being within engineering, what would you say would they be?
Well, you know what? I think we are a minority, to be honest, in the industry as females. I think a benefit of that is that we do stick together a bit more. We know that we've all sort of experienced that shared difficulty, as Shannon mentioned before, putting the pressure on yourself because you're a female.
Of course.
Not pressure that's been put on by anybody else, just purely yourself because you know that you're one of the only females there. And that shared struggle sort of brings you together a lot more. And that's a real benefit. So you make good friends. That's a big one.
Of course. And I think there's, being with such an industry, I think the benefit as well to yourselves, as we said, challenging the status quo, being the first, expanding those parameters, cutting out a lot of red tape. And I think, the sense of a legacy, you'd be there for friends, family, or in the future children or whatever, and say, yes, mother or auntie or grandmother was in the Navy and she did X, Y, and Z, and she really contributed to engineering as well. So I think it's this kind of this, as we said, this legacy or giving back that people will look really forwards to. Now, my last question basically is, again, we're directing this to our girls at school, at university, who basically are trying to choose a career path and kind of unsettled about whether engineering is for me, why so, which part of engineering could be best. And obviously it comes back to characters, qualities, families, and a lot of other aspects as well. But what would you recommend for, let's say, women, should they be taking a role or a path in engineering, what would you say to them?
Absolutely. If that's what you're interested in, then definitely go for it. It shouldn't be anything to do with gender, really. If that's what you're interested in, go for it. Engineering's a great industry to be in. As I've said before, it's changing constantly. There are so many opportunities, and there's so much variety in the job. 100%. Of
course.
Go for it.
Shannon, the same question. What would you recommend to the girls watching this?
So as me and Hannah have both experienced, it's not just a career, it's like a life choice. So if you feel like you want to do engineering, depending on what stream you'd like to go down, you don't have to just have your normal typical 9 to 5. If you'd like to go further, like into the oil industry or in the wind industry and the gas industry, I understand that some of them are like dwindling out, but it's still the availability is there. But it's such a good industry to be part of, and I don't feel like we get enough recognition with the engineering side. Yes, like we're continuously evolving, but there's so much other industries going on that engineering just sort of, yes, we are there, we're about, but hopefully in the not too distant future, it'll be, wow, engineering's here and it's here to stay.
Absolutely. Ladies, I'd like to conclude. I think this conversation has been very interesting, and I think, knowing you both as individuals, but also as engineers, has been a phenomenal experience for myself, to be honest with you, to find out more about what you've gone through. And I think we've touched upon a lot of interesting points about challenges before the job, challenges during the job, I think the benefits. We discussed the 3 R's, the responsibility, the risk and reward. And I think this is important for anyone trying to take such a decision, is to actually analyze. And I think always when students come to me, whether at high school level or at the university level, and say, I want to do X or I want to do Y, and I say, yes, I can give you the theoretical answer and knowledge, but I think meeting practitioners and industry-based personnel is key, because you get the best of both worlds. You will get what happens on a good day, what happens on a bad day, and based on that, you can then try to place yourself in that situation and see whether that would be something for you or not. Ladies, any final remarks before I close off? Hannah?
So what I would say for any females that are watching this that are looking to go into engineering, what I tend to find, and I can't speak for everyone when I say this, but women generally tend to doubt themselves more and don't have that confidence that often males have. And I would just say to all those girls that back yourself, because you can do it. And we do need females in the industry, and you can do it. Go for it and back yourself.
Thank you very much. Shannon, same to you. Final remarks, comments to our fellow students and otherwise.
Not aimed fully at females, but yes, the academics are hard. Yes, it's going to be long. Yes, there's times where you don't think you can do it. We're sat here, we've done it. It shows it's pretty easy. Look at me.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, Shannon. I'd like to thank you all for watching this podcast today, and specifically I'd like to thank the Royal Navy and British Embassy in Bahrain for allowing us this opportunity to basically discuss very important issues, especially related to women within engineering, which I think is a very key aspect. We discussed a range of topics, we discussed the responsibilities, the risks and rewards of such a profession. I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much.